World War I killed over 20 million people and destroyed entire empires. But it all started because a driver took a wrong turn on one street in Sarajevo. Yeah, seriously. One small mistake triggered a chain reaction that dragged the entire world into war. Taxicabs rushed soldiers to save Paris. Germany secretly asked Mexico to invade America. And a French general predicted exactly when the next world war would start. So how did that even happen? Here's a map of Europe in 1914. The major powers had split into two rival groups. Over here on one side, you had the Triple Alliance. Germany right here in the middle, Austria-Hungary over here, and Italy down here. On the other side, the Triple Entente. France over here, Russia all the way over here, and Britain up here. The idea was simple. If you attack my friend, you have to fight me too. Hey, France, don't even think about attacking us. We've got Austria-Hungary and Italy on our side. Oh yeah? Well, we've got Russia and Britain on our side. So nobody attack anybody. Agreed? Agreed. The problem was that instead of preventing war, these alliances guaranteed that any small fight would drag everybody into a big one. On top of all that, Germany and Britain were spending lots and lots of money on their navies. Britain launched a warship called the Dreadnought in 1906 that made every other battleship in the world obsolete overnight. Germany started building their own. Between 1906 and 1914, Britain built 29 dreadnoughts. Germany built 17. Neither side wanted to stop. Meanwhile, down here in southeastern Europe, you had the Balkans. And the Balkans were a mess. The Ottoman Empire was falling apart, and everybody wanted a peace. Serbia over here had doubled in size after two Balkan wars, and Austria-Hungary was terrified that Serbian nationalism would tear their own empire apart from the inside. So Europe was basically a room full of people pointing loaded guns at each other. And all the guns were connected by tripwires. All it needed was one spark. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary, was visiting the city of Sarajevo, right here in Bosnia, with his wife, Sophie. 6 assassins from a group connected to a Serbian secret society called the Black Hand were waiting along his motorcade route. The first one threw a grenade that bounced off the Archduke's car and hit the vehicle behind them. 20 people were hurt, but the Archduke was fine. The assassination had failed. But then, Franz Ferdinand insisted on visiting the injured at the hospital. His driver took a wrong turn, stalled the car, and ended up stopped right in front of a 19-year-old named Gavrilo Princip. Princip pulled out a pistol and fired 2 shots. Both Franz Ferdinand and his wife were dead within the hour. And now, the tripwires started snapping. Hey Germany, Serbia just killed our Archduke. We want to crush them. You backing us? Whatever you need, we've got your back. So, Austria-Hungary sent Serbia a list of 10 demands that were basically designed to be impossible. Serbia accepted 9 of them, but Austria declared war anyway. Then Russia started mobilizing its army to defend Serbia. So Germany declared war on Russia. Then Germany declared war on France because France was allied with Russia. Then Germany invaded Belgium over here to get to France faster. And Britain declared war on Germany because Britain had a treaty to protect Belgium. Hey Britain, you can't be serious about going to war over Belgium. We have a treaty. A treaty? That's just a scrap of paper. In just 6 days, almost every major country in Europe was at war, and everybody thought it would be over by Christmas. Germany's plan was called the Schlieffen Plan. Swing a massive army up through Belgium, loop around through here, and crush Paris in 6 weeks. Then turn the whole army around, go all the way over here, and deal with Russia. Quick and easy. But Belgium actually fought back. The fortress city of Liège held the Germans for almost 2 weeks. Then Germany brought in enormous 420mm siege guns, called Big Bertha, and blasted right through. The Germans marched through Belgium and killed roughly 6,000 civilians along the way. They burned the university library at Leuven with 300,000 medieval manuscripts inside. About 1.5 million Belgians became refugees. By September, the Germans were within 30 miles of Paris. The French government fled to Bordeaux, but the Germans had marched so fast that a gap opened between 2 of their armies. French General Joffre spotted it and counterattacked. 600 Paris taxicabs rushed soldiers to the front. The Battle of the Marne stopped the German advance, and the Schlieffen Plan was dead. Then both sides tried to outflank each other, racing northward toward the English Channel. When they ran out of room, they started digging. By Christmas 1914, a continuous trench line stretched 475 miles from the North Sea all the way down here to the Swiss border. And that front line barely moved for the next 3 years. Now, speaking of that first Christmas, something strange happened. On Christmas Eve, German soldiers started singing Silent Night across no man's land. British soldiers answered with their own carols. About 100,000 men climbed out of their trenches, exchanged cigarettes and food, and buried each other's dead. It was the last time anything like that ever happened. By the next Christmas, commanders ordered artillery to fire on Christmas Eve just to make sure nobody tried singing again. And those trenches were a nightmare. Soldiers lived in narrow ditches filled with mud, rats, and dead bodies. Lice covered almost every man on the front. A disease called trench foot rotted soldiers' feet from standing in water for days. And then, in April 1915, Germany introduced something new: poison gas. At the Second Battle of Ypres, Germany released 168 tons of chlorine gas along a 4-mile stretch of the front. Soldiers who had no protection choked, went blind, and drowned in their own lungs. Both sides started using gas after that. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front over here, things moved faster, but were just as bloody. At the Battle of Tannenberg in August, the Germans destroyed an entire Russian army in 4 days. Russia lost 92,000 prisoners. But Russia crushed Austria-Hungary's army down in Galicia, killing or wounding 420,000 men. The Habsburgs never recovered from that. The Ottoman Empire also joined the war after German warships flying Ottoman flags bombarded Russian ports. So now the war stretched all the way from Belgium over here to the Middle East down here. In 1915, the British came up with a plan. Hey, let's attack the Ottoman Empire right here at Gallipoli, force open the Dardanelles, and open a supply route to Russia. A young politician named Winston Churchill pushed the whole thing. Ottoman forces held the high ground and pinned the Allies on the beaches for 8 months. Each side lost roughly 250,000 men. Churchill had to resign. Now it's 1916, and the war got a whole lot worse. At Verdun, right here in France, Germany tried to bleed France dry. The battle lasted 303 days and produced roughly 750,000 total casualties. France rotated about 75% of their entire army through one single battle. Then, the British launched their own offensive at the Somme. They dropped 1.5 million shells on the German lines for a week. Most of them missed. British soldiers went over the top and walked straight into machine gun fire. First day, July 1st, 1916. 57,000 British casualties. 19,000 dead. The bloodiest day in British military history. The whole battle lasted 5 months, cost over 1 million casualties, and the front moved about 6 miles. But one good thing came out of the Somme. The British brought a new weapon, a big armored vehicle that could cross trenches and crush barbed wire. What are you building? Water tanks. For who? Russia. Then why are you testing them on the battlefield? No more questions, please. They were called tanks. The name stuck. Now it's 1917, and 3 big things happened that changed everything. First, Russia collapsed. Lots and lots of people were starving. The army was falling apart, and in March 1917, revolution toppled the Tsar. A few months later, a man named Lenin seized power and pulled Russia out of the war. Russia signed a terrible peace deal, giving up 1/3 of its population, 1/3 of its farmland, and 90% of its coal mines. But the big problem for the Allies was that 1 million German soldiers were now free to head west. Second, Germany did something incredibly stupid. They sent a secret telegram to Mexico. Hey, Mexico, if the United States joins the war against us, how about you invade America? And if you win, you can have Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona back. You want us to invade the United States? Yes. And you think that's going to work? Just do it. British codebreakers intercepted the telegram. American newspapers published it. On April 6, 1917, the United States declared war on Germany. And third, the French army almost broke. After a disastrous attack that killed 130,000 men in days, soldiers in about half of all French divisions refused to attack. They agreed to keep defending their trenches, but they would not charge into machine guns again. The new commander, Pétain, calmed things down with better food and regular leave. But American troops were still months away from arriving in large numbers. Germany knew it had one last chance. In March 1918, over 6,000 guns fired 1 million shells in 5 hours. Stormtroopers punched through the lines and advanced 40 miles, the biggest gain since 1914. But Germany was losing its best soldiers faster than it could replace them. By July, the offensive was dead. Then, it was the Allies' turn. On August 8th, British, Australian, and Canadian forces smashed through the German lines at Amiens and captured 17,000 prisoners in a single day. The top German general called it the Black Day of the German army. The Kaiser told him the war must end. And it all collapsed fast. Bulgaria surrendered September 29th. The Ottoman Empire, October 30th. Austria-Hungary, November 3rd. German sailors mutinied. The mutiny spread across Germany. The Kaiser abdicated on November 9th and fled to the Netherlands. 2 days later, on November 11th, 1918, at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the guns went silent. The armistice was signed in a railway car in a French forest near Compiègne. And now, it was time to figure out who owed what to whom. The Treaty of Versailles was signed on June 28, 1919, exactly 5 years after the assassination in Sarajevo. Hey, Germany, this war was your fault. We didn't start it. Doesn't matter. You're paying for it. How much? 132 billion gold marks. And you're losing 13% of your territory over here, and all your colonies. And your military gets capped at 100,000 men. No air force, no tanks, no submarines. Anything else? Yes, you're not allowed to join with Austria, ever. This doesn't seem fair. Sign it or we invade. 4 empires that had existed for centuries were gone. The German Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Russian Empire, and the Ottoman Empire. New countries appeared all over the map. Poland over here, Czechoslovakia here, Yugoslavia here, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania up here. The Middle East was carved up between Britain and France in ways that still cause problems today. A corporal named Adolf Hitler, who had served on the Western Front, would spend the next 20 years exploiting Germany's anger over the treaty. French Marshal Foch looked at the whole thing and said, "This is not a peace. It is an armistice for 20 years. He was off by 65 days.